All right, is that better? Can you hear me now? Just give me some thumbs up if you can hear me now. I think I had to make some adjustments. Can you hear me? All right. Let me see. Can you hear me? Hmm. I'm just trying to do it. All right. I just want to know. Okay. Yes, we can. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Well, again, I just say good evening. Good evening to everybody that's joining. Welcome to Faith and Finance Tuesday, a segment of the core where we're built from the inside and out. And sorry about the technical difficulties. Um, I thought everything was set up fine earlier, so I didn't get to go back and check. But sorry about that. But I'm your host, Pastor Marvin Adair, and I want to thank each and every last one of you for taking time out and joining me this evening. Hey, whether you're watching us live tonight or you're going to catch the replay, I believe the conversation today is is not only going to be about your money, but I think it can help yourself in your future and what God has placed on the inside of you. Right? All right, good, good. If you're joining us live, go ahead and say hello in the comments. Let me know that you're here. And while you are there, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so that whenever I go live, you will not miss it. So here on Faith and Finance Tuesday, we're bringing biblical wisdom and practical finances because I believe that faith should influence every part of our lives, including the way we think about money, success, stewardship, growth, and our future. And so over the last couple of episodes, we talked about personal growth being the foundation of financial success. We learned that your thinkings determine your direction. We talked about that personal growth increases your value and how that your capacity determines your increase. We also talked about how success is not magical, but success becomes predictable when you're consistently apply the right principles, right? So what I want to do tonight, I want to take this conversation one step a little further. And tonight, I want to begin a new series called "Developing the Mind to Prosper." Right? Developing the mind to prosper. So when some people hear that word prosper, they immediately become uncomfortable. And so what I want to do, what I'm trying to do with these episodes is set us up before we start actually talking about getting out of debt and all this other stuff. And so I'm trying to set a good foundation for us, right? Because what we want to do is really get our minds right, get our thinking right so that we can actually prosper and change our financial situation so that we can hold on to what God has given us and be good stewards. And when it comes to prosperity, a lot of times I think that so many people have made prosperity sound like it's a bad word. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Sometimes people believe that if you talk about prosperity, you must only be talking about money. You must only be talking about cars or houses, anything that's material, right? But when you look at prosperity, it's bigger than money because prosperity means to advance. It means to make progress. It means to move forward. It means to become profitable, productive, fruitful, and effective in the areas where God has placed you. So you can be prosperous spiritually. You can be prosperous mentally. You can be prosperous physically. You can be prosperous in your relationships. You can be prosperous in businesses. You can be prosperous on your career. And guess what? You can also be prosperous with finances. So prosperity is not a bad word. It's a good word, matter of fact, because when you really begin to understand it through the word of God. And so before we start breaking down debt and like I said, before we start talking about credit and investing and insurance, retirement, budgeting, and stuff like that. All those practical areas of building your financial house. We first have to deal with what is happening on the inside of our minds, inside of us. Because if your mind does not change, the information that we're sharing, that we'll be giving, that our hosts will be coming on, our guests will be coming on and sharing with us, that information will not stick. So you can learn how money works, but if you still have a poverty mindset, you will still continue to make poverty decisions, even though you understand. See, you can learn how to budget, but if you have not developed discipline, you will abandon you'll abandon budgeting. You can learn how to invest, but if fear controls you may never start investing. So you can learn how to get out of debt, but if your habits never change. See, and that's what we want to talk about, prospering. If your habits never change, you will eventually go right back into debt. So before we can deal with, I believe, before we can deal with money, we have to deal with our minds. And so tonight I wanted to make sure that we went over that, because I want you to make a decision. I want you to say to yourself that I'm going to prosper. Not because everything is already perfect, not because you have all the money you want, not because you reach your goals, or because you have decided that you will not remain, but you decided. Or you're not prospering. Or let me see, how do I want to say this? It's not because you're there yet, right? But it's because you have decided that you will not remain where you are. See, you decided that you're going to grow, you're going to advance, you're going to learn, you're going to make progress, you're going to become better, and you are going to make things better wherever God has placed you. So it doesn't make a difference, because we want to get out of that status quo trap. So let me ask you this question tonight, and you can write this down for your own notes. Have you ever become uncomfortable with something simple because that is all you have, because that's all you ever seen? Let me say it again. Have you ever become comfortable with something simply because that's all you ever had? That's all you ever seen. See, some of us saw our parents struggle. We saw our grandparents struggle. We saw our aunties and our uncles. They struggled. We looked around and we seen our neighbors, they struggle. We watched people go to church Sunday after Sunday, pray, shout, sing, worship God, but they leave the church trying to figure out how they're gonna pay their next bill. They figuring out how they're gonna rob from Peter just so they can pay Paul. They're trying to figure out how they're gonna make it through the next week. And when you see something long enough, I believe you begin to think that it's normal. See, you can start believing this is just how life is. This is how our family has always lived. Nobody in my family has ever owned anything, so I shouldn't own anything. Or nobody in my family has ever invested. See, and nobody in my family has ever built wealth. And we have always lived paycheck from paycheck. We start thinking like this because this is what we've seen in our lives. That's what everybody done. We always struggle. And without realizing it, you begin to accept that same status quo behavior. The status quo simply means the way things currently are. It just means, you're just accepting it. This is how it is. But just because something is the way it is currently, it does not mean that it's the way it has to always be, right? Just because your family struggled don't mean that you have to struggle forever. Just because nobody taught you about money, That does not mean that you cannot learn about money. Just because nobody in your family invested does not mean that you cannot learn how to invest. Just because nobody owned a business does not mean that you cannot become one day a business owner. Just because nobody left an inheritance doesn't mean that you have to do the same thing. You know, you can become the first one in your family to make the change and change the family tree. I think I said that last week or the week before. You can be the one that changes the trajectory of how your family used to operate. You can be the one that can break curses and start bringing up your family with the blessings and teaching your family. And like I said, at some point, somebody has to say enough is enough. Somebody has to say that I'm not going to, I refuse to continue to let my generations behind me do the same thing that I did. And knowing that it was leading us nowhere. So this may be where we start. You can say this may be where we start. But I want you to know that this is not going to be where you're going to finish. See, if you make that decision today that you're going to do better, then better has to come because you made up in your mind that I want to make a change. So if you're trying to make a change with your finances and you're going to do better with your finances and you get it in your mind that I'm going to prosper in this area, it has to happen. Now, I'm not going to keep, saying that I don't want to keep saying these things and talking about struggles, but we got to get it. I need you to hear it so that you can expel it, right? Get it up out of you. Cause we say sometimes that's all we got. But you got to develop that mindset that I'm not going to struggle. I'm not going to pass struggling down to my kids and to my grandkids and to my great-grandkids. Excuse me. From this day forward, I'm going to do something different. And if we start saying that, excuse me. And if you start saying that, you're the one that makes the change. So I want to get into this. Changing, developing the mind to prosper. Developing the mind to prosper, excuse me. And so point one, what I want to talk about is here's one of the things that I've learned. That every morning you have to wake up in attack mode. Now let me explain what I mean when I say attack mode. I'm not talking about waking up being angry, or I'm not talking about attacking people. I'm not talking about being aggressive, being rude, or combative. When I say attack mode, I'm talking about waking up with a problem-solving mentality. I'm talking about waking up and asking what is out of order in my life that I need to fix. What area of my life needs my attention? What needs to be improved in my life? What needs to be developed in my life? What needs to be corrected in your life? What needs to be brought under control in your life? Because too many people wake up and simply accept whatever life brings them. And so I'm learning, and I've learned to wake up every morning in attack mode. See, because too many people, they accept the same attitude. They accept their same behaviors and habits. They accept being in debt. They accept having poor health. They accept being in broken relationships. Not having the knowledge that they need, living from paycheck to paycheck. Making same excuses. But when you develop the mind to prosper, you stop accepting everything as permanent. You start looking at your life and saying, what can I improve? That's attack mode. What can I learn today? That's attack mode. What can I change? What can I build? What can I fix? You know, that is what I mean by attack mode, because you're no longer allowing your life to be status quo, but you're saying that I have to fix it, I have to change it, I got to trust God, I got to lean on God to give me the strength, give me the wisdom, give me the knowledge. You know, you got to start listening to what God says in the beginning, and you got to start doing what He tell you to do. You know, if we look at Genesis 1:28. And this is the King James Version. Listen to what God said. He said, I will bless them. And God said, until then, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion. Listen to this. And have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowls of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Now look at the language God is using. Because He says, be fruitful, multiply, replenish. He said subdue, and then He said have dominion. Read it for yourself. Read it for yourself. And every word that God described in that passage, those are not passive words. Those are not passive words. God did not tell Adam and Eve to sit back and watch life happen. God gave them an assignment. He told them to produce. He told them to increase. He told them to make something better. He told them to bring things into order. God told them to exercise dominion. See, the word subdue means to bring something under control. It means to subdue it, bring it under your control. It means you do not allow disorder to remain unchanged. It means that you don't allow disorder to stay in charge. So when you wake up in attack mode, here's what I'm saying. I'm not going to let disorder control my life. If your finances are out of order, you saying, I am going to start learning how to manage my money. If it's your credit that's out of order, you're going to pull your credit reports and find out what's in it. And you're going to begin to take the necessary steps to get it together. Same thing with your health. If your health is out of order, you got to start somewhere. So maybe that place is you start walking, then you start exercising, you start drinking more water, you start eating more healthier. And you do things that causes improvement. You know, if my attitude is out of order, and then I know I have to renew my mind, right? If my relationship is out of order, then I know that I need to learn how to communicate with my wife. I know I need to learn how to forgive. I need to learn how to listen, because what we're trying to do, we need to learn, we're trying to become better. We're trying to become better. So you learn things and you become better. It's the same thing with your business. If you have a business and it's struggling, you study. You learn more, you make calls, you improve the system, and you become more valuable. Now I'm not going to sit there and say, well, this is just the way it is, because we've been doing that way too long. We got to start saying, get up out of here with that. Get up out of here with that. It's not just the way it is. See, I don't believe God put us here to stay stuck. I don't believe God just put us here to keep struggling. I don't believe God placed His Holy Spirit on the inside of us so that we can remain defeated in every area of our lives. I don't believe it. I don't believe we are supposed to keep looking at the same problems year after year without ever taking responsibility for doing something about the problem. See, God gave you power. He gave you intelligence. He gave you creativity. He gave you gifts. God gave you the ability to learn. He gave you the ability to make choices. Listen, God gave us the ability to grow. And wherever there is lack in our life, that area becomes the target. So if that area is lack in your in lack of knowledge, let me put it that way, then you understand that you gotta start learning. Maybe you don't know all that you need to know about finances. It's okay. It's okay. But you have the ability to learn. You know, you have the ability to start studying and get more information. You know, maybe there's a maybe you have a lack in your discipline. Guess what? It's okay. You can learn how to start establishing a routine. You know, I was talking to a young lady today, and she was telling me that, you know, she's on her health journey, and she said she just started learning every day that she would walk 5 minutes. Now, to some of us, that may not seem like it's a lot. But what she was doing, she was conditioning herself to, even if she had a tired day, a day that she didn't want to do nothing, she knew she can get up and walk for 5 minutes. You know, she said sometimes she would go when she first started, before she started working out. She said she'd just go, sometimes just go to the gym and sit in front of the facility. She said she never got out of the car. But she was conditioning her mind. She was taking herself. She recognized that there was lack, and she wanted to do something, you know. So if you have lack in your finances, what do you start doing? And many of you who's on today, you're doing it. You want to start studying about money. You want to start learning about money, how to invest, what it is that you need to do to grow your finances, how to get out of debt, how to stay out of debt. You know, so it's okay to have lack. Well, we got to start saying that it's not okay to stay in lack. You know, it's not okay to stay there. It's not okay to stay in a broken relationship. You know, you got to start working on your communication and working on your character. You know, do not just complain about the lack. Do not just complain about the lack. Here's what you need to do. You need to attack the lack. And you attack it with wisdom and discipline. You attack it with prayer, you know, education and consistency or consistent action. You know, that's how you become better. And this is how you train the mind to prosper. See, because a prosperous mind operates different. A prosperous mind, it does not deny that the problem exists. It simply refuses to believe that the problem has to remain forever. See, a prosperous mind says, this is where I am, but this is not where I have to stay. A prosperous mind would tell you, I may not know the answer right now, but I can learn. See, a prosperous mind says, I may not have all the resources yet, but I can start with what I have. I can start with what I got in my possession. A prosperous mind would say that I may not be where I want to be, but I can take one step today. I can take one step today. I can make one positive step forward. And that is why God said to be fruitful. You know? You think about fruitfulness. Fruitfulness means that something is beginning to produce from your life. It doesn't mean that, you know, you go plant an orange tree or orange seed. Yeah, it's just a seed. But as that tree grows, the leaves come on, you start seeing a little flower. It's starting to produce what it says it's supposed to produce. And that's what we have to do. We got to produce what we know we're supposed to produce. So let me ask you this. What is you producing? What are you producing? Is your thinking producing better decisions? Are your habits producing better results? Is your work producing greater value? Is your money producing anything for your future? Or is your faith producing action? You know, just think about that. Is your faith producing action? What are you producing? You know, like I said, I don't care where you are right now. You know, I want you to start looking at my life right where I'm at right now. What am I going to produce tomorrow to make it better? What are you going to do to make it better? And listen to this. God did not create us just just to consume. He didn't create us just to consume. God created us to produce. He created us to produce. He said, be fruitful. Jesus even said it too. He said he's going to prune us. He's going to, and as long as we're connected to him, he said that we may bear much fruit. He wants us to be producers. He created us to produce. So we should produce solutions. Anybody going through something, you should be able to come up with some solutions and not respond to the problem, but actually figure it out. You should be able to produce value, produce ideas. We're supposed to be able to produce strong families and healthy communications. Let me see. We should be producing businesses. I believe that us in the church, we should be producing businesses. There should be a lot of Christian businesses all over the United States, all over the world. We shouldn't be going and having to go to some other corporation or some other company because we don't have enough in our, because we have accepted the mind that we're not supposed to produce. We're not supposed to prosper. We're looking for opportunities, but how about producing an opportunity? We should be producing fruit. And if in any area of your life is not producing fruit, that is where you need to focus your attention to. And that's where the pruning has to happen. See? That's where the learning has to happen. That's where discipline must happen. It's the area where you got to make change happen. So here's our first action or step for tonight that I want us to take. I want you to take. Identify one area of your life where you have accepted the status quo. Just one area of your life. I want you to think about that. And if you're taking notes, write it down. You don't have to put it in the chat. But just take one area of your life where you have accepted the status quo. Right? And I don't want you to try to fix everything tonight. That's not what we're doing. We're just writing down this one area where you have become too comfortable. Maybe it's with your finance. Maybe it's with your health, with your career or business. It can even be with your attitude. Or maybe some of us has gotten real comfortable with our relationship with God. Because underneath that area, the area that you wrote down, I want you to write down one action you can take this week, not next week, this week, to begin to bring it under control. So once you write down what area you have accepted the status quo where you have gotten comfortable, up under that, I want you to write down one thing that you can do this week. What can you do to bring it under control, right? And I'll give you a quick example. With my job, I like I said, and really what I've been doing a lot of this week is taking accountability, and I've been reflecting on where I am as in my career, and I know where I could be. I had a lot of things come up, but still, I could have, I didn't balance it right. Let me say that, and I'll teach more on there about balancing later. But so I've been spending this last week reflecting, and I said, okay, let's get it back together. So what did I do? I identified what happened, what got comfortable, and then I didn't say, well, we're gonna start 2 months down the road. Once I identified my issue, my problem, what I did, I came up with a solution. And once I came up with the solution, I didn't start waiting 5 and 10 days to make it happen, to put it into action. I started today. One thing that I found out and finding out that people that are successful, they don't move slow. It don't take them all year to start doing something. When they see an issue or they see a problem, they move and they take action. They attack the problem. You know, so you have to write down what you're going to do to bring it up under control. Not next year, not someday, but this week. Because developing the mind to prosper means we stop waiting for somebody else to fix what God has given us the ability and the responsibility to address ourselves. Right? So we got to wake up in attack mode. Every morning you got to wake up in attack mode. You got to identify the lack in your life. You know, you got to confront the disorder. You confront the disorder. You confront what's causing you to be right where you are right now. And you don't need nobody else to tell you because many of us already know. And then you start applying wisdom. You take action and you begin making progress, right? You begin to make progress. So let's move on to point 2. I hope y'all getting something out of this, you know. But yeah, I've been, you know, really just reflecting on who I want to be. Where do I want to be in life? You know, I spend a lot of time as a pastor helping other people. But, you know, sometimes you got to think about, okay, Maureen, where do you want to be? You know, because you have to be an example to tell other people, to show other people. This is how you do it. Don't just talk about it. We say what we say in Missouri. This is what state? The show me state. You know, so you have to be honest with yourself, take accountability, you know, for yourself. Stop looking at, you know, making excuses. You know, I learned something last week. I sat in a meeting, and I'm going to tell y'all this. And I sat in a meeting last week all day. And when we used to have these all-day meetings, I'd be like, I don't want to go. You know, it's all day. But like I said, I've been doing a lot of reflecting on and holding myself accountable. So I really was listening in this meeting, taking notes and stuff like that. I learned so much. But one of the things that I've learned is that sometimes in life we make excuses for what we're not doing, and we're blaming it on something else. And so what I mean by that, you may say, well, I can't go out there and start a business because I gotta, you know, my family is calling me. I need to be with my family. Even though God may have told you or given you the idea to start the business, we neglect certain things in our lives because we're blaming it on something else in our life. We're blaming what we're not doing, what God has called us to do, because we start blaming it. Well, I got to put my attention over here. We're blaming that we're not as healthy as God called us to be because we're blaming other areas. Well, I don't have time to do this because I'm always working and I'm always doing this. But that's not going to get us to where God wants us to get us. That's not a prosperity mindset. See, a prosperity mindset says I'm going to come up with solutions. I'm going to set systems. I'm going to get a system that I can put in place to where I can prosper, not just in one area, but I can prosper in every area of my life. And I believe that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to prosper not just in one area. You know, he wants us to prosper in every area. And when you start prospering in that area, God don't want you to let the other area go back to lack. So we have to develop a prosperous mindset before we can even talk about anything else. Hey, let's transition over to point 2. Point 2. Now, in point 2, this is where somebody might say, well, Pastor, that sounds good, but you don't know my current circumstances. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what I've lost. You do not know how limited my resources are. And you know, you might be right. You might be right. I may not know every detail of your circumstance. But here's what Joseph teaches us, right? Your circumstances does not have the final authority over your prosperity. Isn't that what that story taught us? Because prosperity is not first something, or let me see, how can I say it? Prosperity is not first something that's around you. Prosperity is first something developed within you. It's not the thing that's around you that makes you prosperous. It's the thing that's in you that makes you prosperous. Right? So a prosperity is a mindset. Prosperity is not circumstance. It's a mindset. So when we look at Joseph, the Bible tells us, in my opinion, as we look at this story, I think Joseph is probably one of the clearest examples in the Bible of a person who prospered before his circumstance ever looked prosperous. When we look at his story, most people look at prosperity from a outside point of view. They look at what type of house you have, or what type of car you got, what type of, what your bank account look like, how much money you got, what position you hold, or what type of clothes you have on. See, they look at what somebody owns, and then they decide whether a person is prosperous. But the Bible gives us a completely different picture when we look at Joseph. So look at this, Genesis 39. Write this down, Genesis 39 and 2 and 3. Everything's coming out of King James, so you can read it in different versions, but my version is King James tonight. And it says, and the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of the master, his master, the Egyptians. And his master saw that the Lord, listen to this, and the master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hands. Now, the master saw that he was, that God was with him, and that God had made him prosperous with everything he did with his hand, right? So let's start right there, because the Bible says that Joseph was a prosperous man. But where was Joseph at? Was Joseph sitting on the throne? Was Joseph running Egypt? Not yet. Joseph wasn't surrounded by wealth. See, he did not own a house he was living in. He was in, the Bible says he was in his master's house. Joseph was a servant. He had been betrayed by his own brothers. He was thrown into a pit. He was sold. He was separated from his father. He was taken to a foreign land. But yet, the Bible says that Joseph was a prosperous man. That don't sound too prosperous to me. They ought to change that. Change the way we define that ought to change the way we define prosperity. Because when his master Potiphar called him prosperous, and said, I see that the Lord is with him and everything he do is prosperous, Joseph wasn't looking too prosperous. See, because according to the Bible, Joseph's prosperity was not based on what he owned. It was based on who was with him. That's what his prosperity was based on. The Lord was with Joseph. And because the Lord was with Joseph, whatever Joseph put his hands on began to do what? Improve. And that is the mindset I want us to develop tonight. That prosperity is not simply about having everything I want. Prosperity is having the ability, the wisdom, the character, the discipline, and the favor of God to make things better. To make things better. Wherever God has you at right now in your life, it can become better. See, Joseph could walk into a bad environment, and Joseph had the ability, because God was with him, to improve it. He could walk into a Potiphar's house as a servant, but guess what? Potiphar recognized that God was with him. Potiphar recognized, he said, wait a minute, there's something different about that man. And he said that's why the Bible says his master saw that the Lord was with him. He saw that everything Joseph touched began to what? It began to grow. It began to improve. It began to change. Now ask yourself, is God with me? And I'm going to tell you, yes, he is. And I'm going to tell you that he promised us that he would never leave us nor forsake us. And I would tell you that he is not a respecter of person. So if he gave Joseph the same ability, guess who else got that ability? See, listen, Joseph did not wait until he became the boss to operate in excellence. Or what are you waiting on? See, he didn't say, I'm just a servant, so I'm only going to do the bare minimum. He didn't say that. He didn't say, oh, well, this ain't my house, or this is not my house. He didn't say, this is not my business, so, I'm not going to do or take care of this man's business, this is not my resources. They ain't paying me enough to do this. That ain't what Joseph said. Joseph brought value. Remember we talked about value? Joseph brought value. Wherever he was placed, Joseph brought some value to that area. And that's a prosperous mindset. See, a prosperous mindset does not wait for a perfect environment. It does not wait for everything to line up before it tells you to move. It doesn't wait for everything to be perfect before you can be productive. It becomes productive in the environment that it is currently in. When you have a prosperous mindset. So let's say you're struggling financially. A prosperous mindset is going to figure out how to get more finances, more resources to come your way so that you can do the necessary things that you need to do. Let me say this again. A prosperous mindset does not wait for a perfect environment before it becomes productive. It does not wait on a perfect environment before it becomes productive. See, some of us are waiting for perfect jobs, or some people are waiting for perfect jobs, waiting for the perfect opportunity, or we're waiting for the perfect amount of money, that perfect connection, that perfect timing, the perfect economy before we do anything. We're always waiting on perfect conditions. But what do Joseph teaches us? That you can begin prospering before your condition become perfect. You can begin to prosper before anything becomes perfect. You are the one that can go out there and create opportunities when there is no opportunity. See, you can begin to learn right where you are right now. You can become more disciplined right where you are right now. You can become more valuable right where you are right now. You can work on your attitude. You can begin managing what you currently have. You may not have the position you want in life, but because you begin to operate in excellence, guess what? That position is coming. It's coming. See, you may not have the income you want right now, but you can become faithful with the income you have, and guess what? That income that you desire has to come. We can keep going. We can talk about the same stuff. You may not have the business. You may not be in the relationship you want to be in. You may not have the health that you want to have right now. But according to the word of God, if we begin to do those things and have that mindset that whatever condition I'm in right now, God, you're giving me the ability to become better. I can learn more. I can discipline myself. I can change my current situation. So you got to think about it. You may not be in the house you want. That's okay. You got to think about where you are right now and what you can do to change your situation because God wants you to prosper. Take care of the place where you currently live at. Make it look like a palace. You might be in the shack, but I'm telling you, make it the best shack on the block. When people come to your house, they say, oh, man, this is cold-blooded. One body church, y'all know that's what we did with the church. That was my mindset at the church. This may be a small storefront church, only hold about 50, 60 people, but we're going to make this church look like it's bigger and better than any other church in the area. And so I started to understand you got to take what you have and you got to utilize it. You got to have a prosperous mindset that whatever God gives me, I'm going to make it grow. You may not have $1,000 to invest, but invest what you got. You can learn. You might not even be in a spot right now where you need to invest. Maybe you need to be. Maybe you're in the time frame where you need to learn how to invest, how investing works. See, prosperity begins before the visible. Prosperity begins before the visible increase shows up. It begins with the way you think. You know, it begins with the way you work. Prosperity begins with the way you manage. It begins with the way you respond to difficulties. That's how do you respond in difficult times? See, Joseph did not let his environment define him. Everything that Joseph went through, Joseph did not take on a broken mentality. He was in an environment that could have broke him. He had every reason to become bitter, every reason to become angry, every reason to stop trying. And just think about it. His own brother betrayed him. So people he trusted turned against him. He lost his home and his family, his freedom. And you think about even later, even after he did the right thing, he was falsely accused and thrown into prison. But Joseph did not allow what happened around him to destroy what God had placed inside of him. And I know y'all might be saying, what this got to do with money? It has a lot, because what we're trying to do is learn how to develop that mindset to where I'm not a victim, but that I am prosperous and I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, that whatever circumstances I'm faced with today, I can make changes about it. So my finances may not be where I want it to be, but I'm going to make some changes. My generations before me and the generations before me may have always struggled. They may have always been in debt, and may have always lived from paycheck to paycheck, robbing Peter to pay Paul. But because of what you're going to invest in right now, the things that you're doing right now, the generations that are behind you don't have to look like the generation that was before you. You know? And here's another thing I think that we have to stop doing, is say that mess up our prosperous mindset. We got to stop letting one bad season change the whole identity or our whole identity. We got to stop doing that. Just because something not right does not define who you are and where you are. Am I talking to anybody? You know, one betrayal, one failed business, or you lose a job, or you get a divorce. You know, you file bankruptcy. You made a bad investment, or you lost your house. You know, it's you know, a bad season. Nothing just went right for you. That does not mean that you're not prosperous. You got to keep trying. Yeah, the enemy wants to break you. He wants to stop you. He don't want you to be who God has called you to be. But you gotta wake up in attack mode every morning, and you gotta fight. You gotta keep fighting. I just told my son this the other day. Son, you gotta keep fighting. He's talking about, I'm tired. That is hard. Yes, I know it's hard, but you gotta keep fighting. You gotta keep attacking. You gotta keep swinging. You gotta keep doing what you're supposed to do. God said it best. Do not get weary in what? Well doing, Because at just the right time, ye shall what? Prosper if you faint not. So you keep fighting for your marriage, fighting for your children, fighting for your health, fighting for your finances. You keep attacking, keep doing what you're supposed to do, because in due season, God said you're going to prosper. You're going to prosper. You know, look at Joseph teaches us. What happened to you does not become who you are. Right? Isn't that what he's teaching us? What happened to you it does not define who you are. You know, again, Joseph was betrayed. But he did not become a betrayer, did he? Joseph was mistreated, but Joseph didn't become dishonest. Joseph was he was lied on, but he didn't become a liar. He was placed in a low place, an empty pit, but he didn't develop a low mentality. He didn't do that. Joseph was in prison, but prison did not get inside of Joseph, did it? And that's what I mean when I say prosperity is a mindset. See, you can be in a difficult place and still have a growing mind. You can be in a limited place and still have unlimited vision. You can be in a temporary setback and still know that your story is not finished yet. See, you can be going through a financial challenge and still be developing the habits that will change your future. See, your current condition is real. Yeah, it's real. But it's not necessarily permanent. It's not necessarily permanent. See, I heard somebody say this before. If you take a person with a poverty mindset and place them in a palace, eventually that palace may begin to look like a shack. They say that's the shack to the palace mindset. But if you take somebody with a prosperous mindset and place them in a shack, they say eventually the shack will begin to look like a castle. Isn't that what I just said? About the church and how we look. You can be on the corner and you can be living in the shack. But if you got a prosperous mindset, that shack gonna start looking like a palace. It's gonna start looking like a mansion. And what some people say, if you know, we say it ourselves. You can take the person out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the person. You know, so that means that if you bring them to the hood, guess what? If they stay there long enough and don't let the hood become their mentality, they gonna change. They might have the best looking house on the block because they don't have that mindset. See, because you got to look at this. People reproduce what is happening on the inside of them. You know, not what's on the outside. If disorder is on the inside of people, then guess what? It eventually creates come on the outside. If discipline is inside of a person, then what begins to create order on the outside? Because they're disciplined on the inside. You see order on the outside. Same thing, if excellence is inside of you, guess what? You'll begin improving whatever is placed in your way. Whatever God gives you in your hand, because you have that excellence on the inside of you, guess what? It show up on the outside. If you got wisdom on the inside of you, then guess what? I don't care where you are, what position you may be in, you're going to start making better decisions in your life. And that is why giving somebody more money does not automatically make them prosperous. We watch TV, we watch stuff like that. Look how many people that doesn't prosper because of the mindset. Well, guys, it's 7:29 I don't want to go over. I still got a lot more that I want to talk about with this prosperity mindset. But we'll get to it next week. Now listen, if you want to, let me see if I can bring this up. All right. So if you guys want to get any personal, one-on-one time uh, help with any financial things, you can scan this QR code, set up an appointment with me. This will take you directly to my Calendly, and we'll sit down and we can go over your goals and some of the things that you're trying to accomplish in your life. And this is all complimentary. It's a complimentary financial checkup. So if you want to get your free financial or complimentary financial checkup, just scan the QR code, and I will make sure that we get together and that I can help you as much as possible. Amen. So that's what I want to do. So I'm gonna leave it up there for a minute so that you can check it out, scan it if you want to. But remember, everything is a mindset. Finances changes when your mind changes. Finances grow when your mind changes. And what we want to do, we want to make sure that we develop a prosperous mindset. A prosperous mindset. So again, if you have any questions or anything like that, just go ahead and scan the QR code and we'll get together and we'll go over some things, one-on-one. And so, hey, guys, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here with me, taking time out again. And always remember, if you work the system long enough, then the harvest will show up. Until next Tuesday, I will see you all then. God bless.